In this episode, you'll discover how your mindset and inner dialogue could be key underlying factors to you feeling overstressed, struggling to lose those extra pounds, or having a difficult time in general on your fertility journey. You'll also learn what hormones are being affected when you're dealing with chronic stress and extra weight and how that can impact your fertility, plus three simple actionable steps for you to de-stress, lose weight, and thrive on your fertility journey today. Welcome to the Finally Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, the podcast helping women identify the real reasons you haven't conceived or stayed pregnant so you and your partner can finally grow the family of your dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. Let's dive in, shall we? In this episode, I'll be talking with Dr. Priyanka Venugopal, a board-certified OB-GYN physician turned founder of Burn Stress, Lose Weight Coaching for professional working moms. And in today's episode, we'll be discussing the hormone secrets you need to feel better for fertility and wellness results. So welcome, Dr. Priyanka. I am looking forward to today's conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so if you just want to give us just kind of like a really brief overview of how you switched from being an OB-GYN to being a burn, stress, lose weight coach. What did that journey look like there? Because I know that that played a big role in the coaching that you do today.
Absolutely. Yeah. The way that I like to describe the story, I never intended to leave medicine. I was not one of those OB-GYNs who was very burned out. I really deeply have always loved what I've done, and I always loved women's health. But as I think many of us, our stories are informed by our experiences. And even the decision that I made eventually to leave clinical practice to do coaching was informed by my own personal journey. So if you had met me back in 2018, you would have met a very overweight OB-GYN physician. So I was an expert in helping women with their health and with their hormones and with their bodies head to toe. But when it came to really incorporating some of what I taught them into my own life, I really felt like there was a really big gap. It's like I knew what to do in my head logically, but somehow I couldn't do it consistently. And for a very long time, I thought I just wasn't disciplined enough, or I don't have enough systems in place, or I don't have enough time, or if my kids were better behaved, or if my husband was more supportive, or like I had a laundry list of reasons that I thought was really my strategic gap. And so for a long time, again, like this is years and years into the making, I would make a plan. I'm going to count the points and the calories. And I'm like, this is the year, this is the month. And I would have some success until inevitably, as a professional working mom, real life would come in the way and I would go off track, and hence the roller coaster ride. And it was back in 2018, 2019 that I stumbled onto a podcast very much like this. And I started to become aware of and understand the impact of our mindset and our perspectives and our thoughts about our time, our kids, our partners, our jobs, our responsibilities. And I think a light bulb went on for me in my mind. I had no, it was never a discipline problem, but the way that I was thinking about my life really was my biggest obstacle. So that was when I really dove into, I went down the rabbit hole of this coaching podcast. I listened to every single episode. I started feeling really so much more empowered, and then I invested in coaching myself. And that was where I did a lot of my own. I went through the journey of changing my relationship with food, with snacking and grazing and the glasses of wine that I would have to take a break. I completely changed my experience as a mom. At the time, my kids were 3.5 and only 6 months old. And I had a lot of thoughts about being a mom and being a physician and the life that I was living. And it's so fascinating how my children did not change because they cannot change at that age. But me changing my perspectives about the life I was living deeply transformed my experience of them. And it changed how I was showing up in the workplace as a physician. And I think for me, what started to happen now, this is 2019, moving into 2020, I decided to get certified as a life coach myself simply because I wanted the skills. I wanted to deepen that skill set. And it started out like for fun, coaching people, and it was very gratifying. I was able to create an impact for women. It was having a ripple effect on their life, like me. And I realized that it really was calling to me a lot more. So for a very long time, I was doing both. I was practicing as a physician and coaching. I had started my business, The Unstoppable Mom Brain, back in 2020. And for a while, I was doing both. And there was a point that came where I just felt this little tug that really just pulled me in the direction of coaching and entrepreneurship. So that was when I decided to make the pivot full time to leave clinical practice. It was a big decision, but this just called to me more.
Hmm. What a beautiful story. And I
Yeah.
think what really struck me the most, because I think that this affects so many people on different levels, is you knew all the information that
Yeah.
you needed to do, but it was like implementing it and integrating it into your life in a way that it could be sustainable and consistent. And I think that that is such a struggle for many, especially working moms, right? There's just so much to balance. Work life, family life, keeping up with the house, right? The list just goes on and on and on. So I'm sure that the listeners can absolutely relate to that in one way or another. And I'm sure, you know, in the future too, you changing your relationship with food, that will teach your children to have a healthier relationship with food too. So it's going to have this like beautiful generational ripple effect as well. So I really love your story. And thinking of someone who is trying to conceive, what I am seeing in my clients, in my community, stress is just such a huge factor. We deal with it in our daily life, whether we're trying to conceive or not. And then when you add trying to conceive in the mix, especially once more time has gone by and maybe more things have come up on your journey, and it can really zap your fertility. So when we're talking about stress and fertility, what hormones are we talking about? What hormones are mostly being affected?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think about I even remember this even as a practicing physician in my OB-GYN practice. Somebody would come in saying, I'm trying to get pregnant and I'm having a difficult time. And this is a part of the conversation. Sometimes we think we need to have a stress-free a stress-free life to optimize our chances of, and this is going to apply to fertility, but also to hit really any goal. Like I need to be completely stress-free so that I can achieve my next big thing. And I think that it really paints stress in a very all or nothing villain or hero kind of light. So the way that I first like to think about hormones and even stress is that cortisol, which is our stress hormone, it is produced by the adrenal glands. It's a superhero in small doses. If we think about the reason that it's here for fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. These are the four very, very normal survival mechanisms that our brilliant brain has evolutionarily created for us to survive. So, the very first thing to really start to catch in my experience is stress on its own is not a bad thing. Being in fight, flight, freeze on its own is not a bad thing. It's a survival mechanism. But I think what is important is how, especially working moms, are over relying on stress as a strategy to get through their day. So I start with this because if you're relying on stress and fear and a lot of judgment and criticism and like that type of, you have an inner, I call this like a soundtrack in your mind to muscle out and buckle through your day, it's not surprising every time you hit an obstacle that includes fertility or infertility in this case, that's going to be your coping mechanism. So the moment if you this is an exercise for everyone to think about as you're listening to this episode, the moment that you hit an obstacle, infertility, you're trying to get pregnant, you're having a difficult time, you're trying to lose weight, you're having a difficult time, your kids are not behaving, even though you're telling them to. If your brain goes to all of the what if scenarios, I call these whiffies, what ifs, whiffies, it's really, really normal. And also, we have to become really aware of it. And I think about this as imagine if in thousands of years ago, evolutionarily, if your body is perceiving that you're in a state of a lack of safety. If you are surrounded by bears and lions and tigers and you're not in a safe environment, that's what cortisol is signaling to your brain that you're not safe right now. We have to fight or flight. it's not an optimal time to get pregnant. It's not going to be an optimal time to release fat on your body, which is a very precious resource. It's not going to be the time that you can dream and imagine big things for your personal life. I start by saying in small doses, cortisol and stress is very healthy and normal, but we are overutilizing it. And it does absolutely impact our ability to get pregnant. It's just signaling to our brain, this is not a good time. She's clearly running away from a lion or a tiger or a bear. And I think if you're listening to this, you can ask yourself, how often am I making the spreadsheet in front of me like a lion? How often am I making this obstacle in front of me feel like a lion or a bear or a tiger? And I think that that in itself can be eye-opening to see how often are we utilizing stress as a strategy.
Hmm. Yeah, so I'm thinking in my mind for someone who's listening and maybe they are so like subconsciously stressed and they have certain patterns and things like that that they just might not even realize that, oh, these endless emails or this project that I'm doing is acting like a lion or a tiger. What would you say could be some symptoms that people are maybe overlooking, or maybe even patterns that are indicating that you are in like a chronic state of stress?
Yeah, this is great. I think that there's probably some markers across the board, across lots of women, but I think that it's also important to individualize us understanding what are our I call these siren songs. What are your personal siren songs that maybe you're in a little bit of a stress state and we have to make a change to our strategy to come out of it, to regulate your nervous system to come out of it. So I'm going to share mine. And if these sound familiar, then again, it's because we're not so unique as much as we think we are. But for me, I'll notice that I feel really fatigued in my mind. I might have I might have been in bed for X number of hours, like the quote unquote right number of hours to go to bed, but the quality of rest I'm getting is clearly not doing what it needs to do because I'm still feeling dysregulated. I'm still feeling fatigued in my brain. I notice that my quality of thinking, the ability for me to make decisive decisions, for me to have high focus time is zapped. My mind is focusing on rumination. I'm second guessing myself. I'm spinning a lot in perseverating or worrying about a problem. I keep turning it over. I flash forward or I flash back to all the mistakes of the past or the possible problems of the future. These are little siren songs to me that stress is running my life. Another one, this is a personal one for me, but I can tell when I'm being a little snippy or a lot of it, not a little bit, a lot of it, snippy or irritable with the people who I love the most when I'm being short with them for no apparent reason. Just like they're just being themselves, and I find myself just being short with them. To me, it's a little siren song that Priyanka, we're feeling a little bit stressed right now. What's going on? It's a kind of a siren song for me to check in. The other one that I will notice is I will be stuck. So if I look at certain results in my life, for me, weight loss was a big one for me, but you can really think about any goal that you have. If you find yourself stuck in the planning phase and in the learning phase and you're not able to execute on what you said, it's not a discipline problem for most working women, for most moms out there. It's a dysregulation problem. We're so dysregulated that our body is in freeze. Our body is in fight or flight. We're not able to make active changes and move on what we said we were going to do. So I think we can all ask ourselves, if you check in with your body, you can tell when you're feeling that buzzy, stressed feeling. How is it showing up? How is a fly on the wall watching you? What does it actually look like?
Yeah, I love those personal examples and I can relate to it too. Just when your brain just seems to be a little clunky and like brain fog, and it's just hard to work on whatever task you may have. I think that that's definitely a common one as well. Switching gears a little bit in terms of your expertise. So we talked about stress a little bit, but being overweight or obese, that can have an impact on fertility. So what would you say could have the biggest positive impact on someone's fertility who may be struggling with losing weight, but they want to get pregnant and they want to have a healthy pregnancy? Because I have had, I have a lot of people in my DMs kind of sharing what's going on for them. And a lot of times they'll say, oh, my doctor won't do XYZ until I lose weight, whatever that may look like for them. And then some people want to try naturally, but they just maybe don't have the right tools or they're plateauing in their weight loss.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. I've seen this as well, where your medical professional, your doctor might say you have to lose weight first before you can embark on maybe your fertility journey, or maybe you can embark on the thing that you really want to do. And if I have my scientist hat on and my physician hat on, I can see why they say that. Because obesity, or especially if you're at a certain level of percent body fat, or BMI is another criteria to look at, there are increased risks in pregnancy. There are increased risks in the delivery process. So, when I have the hat of a physician or scientist on, I can see why they say that. And also, I think two things can be true at the same time. So there might be data for that, but what it also does is it can really put a lot of pressure on women that their weight is a villain and it's something that they have to solve right now with, again, talk about adding on a layer of stress, a lot of pressure and stress that I have to solve this problem before I can move forward in my life. And I think that that is, again, it speaks to the all or nothingness that we all have. I think physicians have it. I think patients have it. Women have it, where we think that we have to completely solve a problem to make forward progress or to get pregnant or to lose the weight that they want to lose. So I think that what I would start with, there's plenty of data and research now that does show that lifestyle changes can have a monumental impact on not just your ability to lose weight, but in your ability to get pregnant and to have a healthy pregnancy. The mistake we make, and again, this is like an overachievers thing, is we think we have to do it all perfectly for it to even matter. And I remember for me, this used to look like if I can't do it all, if I can't do it perfectly, then why bother trying? Because doing small amounts, doing small changes is probably not going to matter anyway. So we throw our hands up in the air or we don't even make those small changes that can actually have a massive shift forward. So the way that I think about this is if there are, let's say, 10 different things that you can do to improve your lifestyle, your day-to-day routine that is taking care of your mind, your spirit, and your body, we get to decide what are those. Maybe there's 10 different things. Maybe you don't have time yet to do all 10. Maybe you don't have the habits in place to incorporate all 10. Maybe you don't have the time in your day to incorporate all 10. But what would be the impact if you just picked one or two? One or two small, simple habits that actually took care of your mind, your spirit, and your body. And the way that I think about how do I know which of the out of the 10, there's 10 of them, which ones do I start with? I would ask everyone to really Google your brain for I'm going to share what my answer is, but I'm going to have you Google your brain for the answer. If you think about one or two habits that are like dominoes, if you knock those one or two dominoes down, they start to knock down the other dominoes. What would those one or two dominoes be? And if you just do those really consistently and really simply, think about the massive impact of what would happen a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. It can really make a difference with your life. So for me, when I think about what are those out of the 10 things that we can do to get healthy, to lose the weight we want, to improve our chances for fertility, for me, the top two things are really to eat when my gut is actually hungry and stop it comfortable. The reason that I like this, I call this just like a body tool. You don't need a calculator. You don't need my fitness pal. You don't have to count points or calories or macros to actually learn how to connect with your body again. That's the intention. The intention is for us to connect with our body again, to connect with our gut again, to not ignore our signals. We don't have to ever be hungry to lose the weight we want, despite what you may have thought. We have to heal that part of our relationship. And we also don't have to treat our body like a suitcase or a trash can where we have to eat extra now to save food for later. So I think that that's the very first principle that is very, very impactful. Eat when you're hungry, stop when you're not. And that's going to challenge your food, your relationship with food. If you're using food to take a break from your life, it's going to come up just by incorporating this one habit. And the second one that I think just scientifically is going to prime your body for success to release fat and to improve your chances for fertility is to take a break from highly processed, ultra refined food. And you get to decide what that looks like for you, how deep dive you want to go into that, how strict you want to be with that. But you can really optimize your fat burning potential and your hormone physiology if you took a break from highly processed foods like sugar, like all the things that are milled into powder and then turned into food. It impacts your insulin pathways, insulin resistance, which is a part of infertility. So I think that these two things, just these two habits, if I had to pick two out of 10, these would be the two that I think would be really impactful.
I love that. And I think for me personally, my first domino that I know is super supportive is eating breakfast in the morning because I know and I'll just notice it even today, like not today, but in recent times, if I don't have a protein-rich breakfast, I'm feeling hungrier sooner. I'm almost getting low blood sugar symptoms, jittery, not really feeling good, and feeling like I just need to eat something right now. So I feel like for me personally, having a protein-focused breakfast really sets me up for success in the day, my metabolism, my cortisol, my blood sugar regulation.
Mhm.
So that's a big domino piece for me. And so what I see commonly with people who are struggling with weight is PCOS and a lot of times anovulation as well. So would you like to dive in a little bit on what hormones are being affected within the body when we do maybe have a little bit of extra weight that we're carrying?
Yeah, the biggest thing with PCOS and fat that's stored on our body is estrogen. That's the number one hormone that is being impacted. That's the pathway that's being impacted the most. And that's because fat cells on our bodies, they produce estrogen. So we get into it's called a hyperestrogen state where our body's producing this estrogen that can absolutely impact ovulation. So when you think about, not to get into too much detail on the hormone pathways of our body, but it impacts your ability to ovulate regularly. It gets in the way of your body's ability to cycle every single month, where your ovaries release an egg. So I think that one of the very first things that, and a lot of times people will say with PCOS is weight loss is one of the strategies and the solutions to being able to start ovulating regularly is to lose weight. That being said, I have seen a lot of people that are thin, that are not overweight, that have PCOS because PCOS is not purely associated with women that are overweight. So I think that it's really important to say that because, again, we can blame our weight, and yes, it will play a role, but sometimes we use a broad brush to paint a fine painting. So I think it's really important when we think about PCOS or anovulation or irregularly ovulating that yes, weight loss is going to play a role, but there's a genetic component to this. There is other components to the diagnosis of PCOS that is separate from just weight loss, which I think is really important.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And something that crossed my mind earlier. So with your OB-GYN practitioner background, and now that you're in a field focused on weight loss, what are your thoughts on Ozempic
Yeah.
or related injectables for someone who is trying to get pregnant or who wants to get pregnant?
Yeah. So I think that this is a nuanced conversation. In general, like my very broad thoughts about Ozempic or any GLP-1 agonist is that it is a very, very valuable tool for the right person. I think, again, this is the broad brush fine painting example again. To paint something as very good or very bad or all bad, I think is doing us a serious disservice. So there's a few thoughts on this. One is it can be a very valuable tool for the right person to have as a part of their toolbox. So the way that I think about your body and your weight is if you're building a house, some people try to build their entire house with one hammer, which is count calories. And maybe they'll get there and it might work. But for most of us, we want lots of tools in our toolbox. We want the saw, and I don't know about you, but I want electric tools. I want tools that are power drills and not just a hammer and nails. I really want to have all the tools in my toolbox. So for me, that has been coaching. That has absolutely been the mindset element of relationships with food. When you have an urge to eat food when your gut's not hungry, there's a mindset gap there. So yes, we can use Ozempic or a GLP-1 agonist to help with our urges and cravings and mental food chatter. Absolutely. And also imagine that in addition to that tool, you pick up a hammer. Maybe Ozempic is like a screwdriver. Imagine that you had a power tool that also taught you the power of your thoughts and your perspectives that's creating your over desire to begin with. So I think that I just wanted to paint that kind of as a analogy to the way that I think about GLP-1 agonists. I work with some clients that are on it. I've worked with a client who was on it when she first started working with me, and then she got off it during our coaching journey together, and she's lost a lot of weight. So I think that it's important to think about it in that way. When it comes to pregnancy or long-term results, what the data has shown with GLP-1 agonists or Ozempic specifically is if you're going to be on it, you're likely going to need to be on it chronically. This is not one of those crash. I think some people come into it with this crash diet idea mentality of let me use it to lose all the weight I want, and then I'll just go off of it. And if you don't do this other work of understanding your relationship with food and where your urges and cravings are coming from, most people will gain the weight back. So it's so important that we think about it as a tool and also ask ourselves, what role do we want it to play? Is it the star of the show, or is it an accessory, like a side person that is helping me get to my goal?
Mm-hmm. I love the way that you painted that picture and really explained how it's for the right person that has the right support really to make sustainable results for them as well. And in my mind, when someone who is wanting to get pregnant, like we also have to think about nutrition and all of those things and making sure that you still have those really important fertility building blocks and everything in place. So I think having that additional support and those additional tools, even if you do decide to use something like Ozempic, is going to really make a difference in the type of outcomes that you receive.
Yeah, and one other point I want to make on the Ozempic GLP-1 agonist is I've seen plenty of women on it and they don't lose any weight because they're not using and thinking about the other things. We use it as, and I will say forthcomingly that I think it does get overutilized because we just want to solve this problem so much. We think we've tried everything. And so I think that when we over lean on it without doing these other pieces of the process, we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Mhm. I agree. I agree. If you could share three simple action steps for the listeners today, what would you like to leave with them?
Oh, this is so good. So I think the very first one is something that might seem small or might seem minor, but it is proven scientifically to deeply help you regulate your nervous system. And that is actually having self-compassion. So putting a hand on your heart and actually saying, if this might feel awkward, it might feel silly, but actually saying out loud, this is just me experiencing stress. This is me feeling worried. This is me experiencing concern or fear. Actually naming the emotion out loud and validating your experience in it actually releases oxytocin in your brain. It's fascinating. Just having some self compassion, which sometimes seems frivolous or sometimes seems indulgent, is actually scientifically going to help you feel better. It counteracts the effect of cortisol. So, as you're embarking on your fertility journey and you feel worried around it, if you're worried that it's not going to work, putting the hand on your heart and validating your experience, validating your worry, validating your concern is really very impactful. The second actionable step is to answer your whiffies. So when you have a what if thought lingering in your head, if we leave them open ended, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And what if I don't get pregnant? What if I don't lose the weight? What if I don't follow through? When we leave them open ended, our body generates a lot of anxiety and fear. And it's what kind of that buzzing feeling that feels really dysregulated. So, one of the strategies that I found to be very impactful is to answer your whiffies, answer your what ifs. What if I don't get pregnant? Answer the question, what then? And when we start to close the loop on some of our biggest fears, we again are doing it, we're doing ourselves a solid. We're taking our brain to a future where we are figuring it out and solving the problems. I think about that as a second regulatory step that we can take is to answer the open-ended questions we have. We might not love the answer. So let me just preface this by saying you might not love the answer, but at least you have an answer. And then the last one is this might be hard, but I'm going to encourage everyone to practice this anyway, is to actually learn how to love the process and not just love the prize. And I say this as a perpetual like gold star A+ chaser my whole entire life. I always want the A. You want the pound down. You want to see a positive pregnancy test. Think about that as the prize. And it makes sense that we love those. But if we are not also loving the journey, even the sticky, messy parts, and loving our experience, or at least finding how human it is for us to experience those, then it makes our entire experience fairly miserable because the times that we're going to have the prize are tiny little spots in time. The process to get the prize is our whole entire life. So when we do the work of loving the process, it's being in a growth mindset. This is the work of Carol Dweck. You actually release dopamine in your brain. and dopamine feels really good. So I say this because we can really leverage a lot of our hormone health by the thoughts we're having in going through any obstacle.
I love those. Thank you so much. And I think the first two, especially, just really anchors in safety in the body, which I think is so important, especially for fertility. And like you said, for weight loss as well, because our bodies won't release any extra pounds or fat or anything if we're not feeling safe in our body. And yeah, those were beautiful. So thank you for sharing those. And I know you have a freebie for the listeners, Hormone Secrets to Weight Loss and Wellness, if you want to share that with them.
Yeah, sure. So I've just noticed on the internet for the last year, when, social media on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, people are using perimenopause like this buzzword. And then you start going down the rabbit hole of checking your labs and checking your hormone levels. And as an OB-GYN, seeing some of that has made me cringe so much because I know women are wasting so many hours of their time. So that in combination with my experience as a stress and weight loss coach, I put together, I think about this as a 30-minute, really comprehensive training on the three hormone pathways that I think most impact women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s to feel better. The way that I like to describe it is on the inside out. When we feel better on the inside, we will feel better on the outside. When we feel better on the outside, we feel better on the inside. So it's a cycle that we can actually start to leverage. And your age doesn't have to rob you of that experience. So I get into the three different hormone pathways. It is really a testament to how you can hit any goal at any age if you understand how your body and your brain are working. So you can get that at burnstressloseweight.com/hormones.
Beautiful. And the link will be in the show notes as well. And tell everyone about your podcast, the Burn Stress Lose Weight podcast, and what they
Yeah.
could expect if they wanted to give it a listen.
Yeah, so I think if I have actually described this podcast, we just celebrated the 3-year anniversary
Oh,
of the
congrats.
show. It's been, I think about it as like my way of having a love letter to my audience on a weekly basis where I share, I think, a lot of what you heard today. I talk about these concepts in detail. I get into strategy, actionable steps that you can take. I get into mindset, obstacles that a lot of women are encountering. And I share a lot of my real life massive epic fails as I navigate this because I think it's so important to let our brain see that there's no such thing as perfection. So, leveraging the idea that we can actually embrace the journey has been really amazing for me. So, yeah, the Burn Stress Lose Weight podcast is available on every podcast platform.
Amazing. And I love that you include mindset because I think that that's a really important piece that can be missing for one avenue or another. And let the listeners know where they can learn more, find you, and connect with you.
Sure. So I am at Burn Stress Lose Weight on Instagram. I love to chat in the DMs, so you can DM me if you found something valuable. Tag us and let us know that you love the show or you took something away. And you can find out more information about how to work with me at burnstressloseweight.com.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your time and your expert shares today, Dr. Priyanka. I really enjoyed the episode.
Thanks.